Good morning. Happy Wednesday, July 3rd. This is Secrets for Success in 2025. Every week, JR and I come to you to give you hints and tricks and tips on being more successful in 2025. I'm located here in the Tampa Bay market area. I'm a serial entrepreneur, own multiple businesses, and glad to say, first thing this morning, I believe it or not, I got an email saying that I was awarded to be a Titan 100. So they pick 100 of the top CEOs in Tampa Bay. And luckily enough, I'm humbled and extremely excited to be a 2025 Titan. So this is going to be a phenomenal episode today. AR, go ahead and introduce yourself, my friend.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on that, Roy. I know that that is a significant, significant achievement. So kudos to you. Congratulations on being selected as a Titan. Good morning, everyone. My name is JR Espino, and my company is Alloy Advisors. And what do I do? I'm a business coach. I primarily help small, medium businesses in two main ways. That's their financial performance to ensure that they're profitable. And then secondly, to be able to help them with their leadership development and company culture to ensure true employee engagement. I'm able to speak to this because of my background. I am not a serial entrepreneur as Roy is. However, I am somebody who is able to transition from corporate America into entrepreneurship, having been with a very successful multi-billion-dollar company for over 27 years and taking that experience over to my clients. If you could please definitely thank you, Anthony, for noting in the chat where you're joining us from. Please do interact with us in the chat where you're joining us from, and keep an eye on that because there are some things that we will be posting in there as well, just to ensure that we are in tune with you all. And so today's topic actually ties really, really well to what I just mentioned in terms of my background. Today's topic we'll be discussing is hiring and managing A players, the secret to building a winning team, and ultimately the strategies for assembling and leading top talent. So again, hiring and managing A players, a secret to building a winning team. So Roy, I must ask you a question. From your perspective, what defines an A player in your business or your industry?
I think the number one thing, like somebody that's part of my team, and especially, when you're looking at like a senior leadership team or even down to a team member, the first thing is the buy-in from the owner or
Mm,
CEO, right? I think the most important thing is the vision of where the company's going, where it's at now, and what does the future look like to anybody that is part of the team? And you're
mm,
always going to hear me say part of the team. Actually, believe it or not, I don't like two words. One, I don't like the word boss. I
mm.
really don't like that. I think the only boss we all have in this world is the guy upstairs, right?
Yeah.
So I think he is our boss. So I like being a leader of a team. I like being the owner, CEO, but I don't like the word boss, and I don't like really the word employee. I think, it's a team member. Like we're all a team, and to become bigger, stronger, better, it really comes down to not who you are, it's who you are along with your team and how you're developing your entire team.
Mm,
Any good, successful owner or CEO in the world did not do it on his own. He did it with his team, right? And I think that's one of the most important things that people definitely need to realize is the potential to grow not as an entrepreneur but within an organization is actually extremely strong, right? Because
mhm,
an owner, a general manager, or somebody in a senior position is always looking for people that believe in the company, believe in the vision, believe in the culture, and want to become more, right? We thrive for that. We
mm,
thrive to want to see people succeed. And I'm not saying everybody, but these are signals. If what I'm saying is not going along with what you're doing right now, you may be in the wrong position. You may
mm,
be in the wrong job, right? You may be in the wrong environment because you want those things. You want constantly knowing that if you're working hard, right, that it's going to pay off in the future for you. That's one of the most important things, like, is not staying stagnant. It's always continuing to grow,
Mm,
right? And always continuing to prosper. And I think that's just in business and in life.
yeah,
You always want those things, right? So it's the things that, that the word in a job, if you feel like you're comfortable, you're actually doing yourself an injustice, right?
mm,
Because comfortability, being comfortable is not a good thing, believe it or not. Like, it's you always want to be growing. You can be comfortable knowing that you have a job, but man, strive to become something more, right? Strive to bring more value within your own self to
yeah,
become more.
yeah,
So I think those are some very, very powerful things. And in order to grow a team, in the right team, there has to be structure within the company.
mm,
There has to be a senior leadership team, manager, has to be, you know, policies, procedures, manuals. These things are in place to ensure the success of the company and also to ensure the values are always staying right within the organization. We're going to get into a lot more of that. But
yeah.
JR, I'm going to kick it back over to you for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really great. It's so funny. One of the things that you had mentioned was that a CEO success has never been on their own. And you hear me say this practically every single week. And that is John Maxwell's saying, one is too small a number to achieve great things. And so it is really important for us to identify, who are those A player team members that we want to have around us. And one quality that I heard you talking about was around growth, and having a growth mindset. And I would say, for those of you who are watching us today, whether you are an established leader, a new leader, an aspiring leader, or even if you don't have aspirations for leadership or entrepreneurship and you are an employee, growth mindset is for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And even with that, it's funny. Another thing that I often talk about is my son. He was a wrestler in high school and in college, and his high school wrestling coach once said, "The moment you're satisfied is the moment you begin to lose." And basically, that ties to what you're saying, Roy, around being comfortable, because it can be a
Mhm.
disservice. And actually, that saying that I quote from that coach, I do believe it is from, oh my gosh, now I'm going to blank on his name. Benjamin Franklin, I think it was, who said, "Show me thoroughly satisfied man, and I'll show you a failure." Now, don't quote me if that's actually the wrong person who I'm quoting, it's because I quote a lot of different people. But ultimately, when we are building our team around us and having those A players, we have to be purposeful. We have to be intentional. There is an organization that I'm aligned with that really helps with identifying that avatar for who you want to hire. Roy and I, and even some of our guests have talked a lot in the past about the people you surround yourself with is who you become. And so if you want to be an A player in your industry, sure as heck better make sure you have A players on your team who can help elevate. You're going to elevate them, which also helps elevate you. So Roy, let me ask you this. When you are talking with a candidate, what do you look for in the first 5 minutes of an interview?
I think the first thing, right, that I want to express is I've been doing this for a long time,
Hmm.
right? And I've made an enormous, gigantic amount of mistakes, right?
Mm,
And I don't always have the answers, right? But I think the most important thing with having businesses and hiring people, it is the absolute hardest thing known to man, right? Because I can tell you even now, like, I would be 10 times bigger than I was or could be if I could get just more people, right, that see
hmm.
the vision. So it's really hard. I think it's the hardest thing. I sit on some boards like Bay Area Manufacturers Association, and I'm connected to all the manufacturers in Tampa Bay. And the number one thing pretty much any business owner says, right, is the hardest thing is finding talent,
Hmm.
right? It's finding talent. So I think it's harder than ever to find
Yeah.
talent, right? It's so, so important because people don't realize when you actually do not hire the right team member, much how much work and how much money it actually cost the company in time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think the number one thing that I would say, right, is truly what their values are, right? What their personal values are. I'm in, I started one of my businesses that's 3D printing additive manufacturing. And I started 10 years ago. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going on my 10-year anniversary. And that business, I call myself 100% a true entrepreneur. Okay. And the reason why I say that is there is no school still for 3D printing additive manufacturing. You have to
Right.
train people from the ground up. There was no policies, no procedures, no manuals. Like every single morning, I wake up and I'm like, why didn't I just buy a McDonald's? Like everything's
Mm.
figured out, right? But no, I'm this crazy guy that decided to get into a brand new industry and figure every single thing out. So the number one key that you always have to look for is what's inside the person,
Mm.
who they are, right? Because especially for me, I got to train them. I got to
Yeah.
spend an enormous amount of time, effort, money, and getting them up to speed on what we do and how we do it. And that's in every business, but in mine, it's really there because again, there's no school, right? So
Yeah.
I think the number one thing, right, is figuring out those things. And a lot of times now we have a lot of different things that we didn't have 10 years ago, right? We have systems that
Mm-hmm.
allow us to understand who somebody is, right? When they're coming to possibly get a job with an organization. So the number one thing that I definitely recommend is personality test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a personality test on somebody that is coming, that is applying and
Mm-hmm.
that passes certain filters that to a point where you're gonna interview them, right? And that's the key, right? Is looking at that, and then whoever's hiring the person, I would definitely do a personality test on if you have like a chief people officer, right?
Yep.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you need to know the weaknesses of the actual hiring person, right?
Yeah.
And know the difference there because when they're talking to that person, there's two different things, right? The chief people officer of a company, and when I had one, right, is completely different than the owner, right? Completely different than the CEO. Yes, he can portray my values and different things, but it's still we're all human beings. We're different. We all have different fingerprints. We all have different personalities, right? So
Yeah.
it's really knowing your people because it's vital, right? That the number one key to success in any business is leveraging people no matter what. And it's still going to be that way, even with AI. It's still going to be the human element. I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody says, right?
Yeah.
Kick it back over to you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And real quick, I just want to acknowledge again, Anthony, thank you for dialing or joining us. David also coming in from the Tampa area. Johnny Ferris from Tampa. William also dialing in from Tampa. Tampa's representing here.
Yeah.
David, thank you for looking it up. Yes, Thomas Edison is who said that. Show me a thoroughly satisfied man, I'll show you a failure. So I'll remember that better. Amandeep, thank you for joining us. And also, really quickly, I dropped into the chat here, viewers, in one word, what makes someone an A player in your book. So if you wouldn't mind adding that, really greatly appreciate that. And so back to, our conversation here. When it comes to surrounding ourselves with the right people, finding talent, you're right, Roy. It is a really difficult time right now. That is actually number one and number two of top challenges of business owners. And it fluctuates between that and marketing, quite frankly.
Hmm.
And making sure that you understand really who they are is important. And as far as that interview and what I would often look for in that first 5 minutes of an interview, because I have over 30 years of leadership experience myself, I would always look for attitude. I would look for the person's desire. Because even to your point, we can train somebody on skills, right?
Hmm.
On the aptitude. What I would be focused on is what is their attitude. Because if
Hmm.
they don't have the proper attitude, then no matter what aptitude we assist them with, it can be a real challenge, both for myself and for them. So doing them a favor in quote, weeding them out, because if they don't have the right attitude in the environment that I'm leading, it's going to be not just painful for me, but painful for them. And so I don't want to hurt people in that way. So I think that that's really important. And even, another element that you had included or you had mentioned is a personality test. And,
Hmm.
I come from organizations where we've used different personality assessments and what have you. And so, actually, I'll even add this to the chat as well. Viewers, do you use any sort of personality assessments when hiring? Answer yes, no, or curious. And it is important because as we are interacting with people, this type of tool, it helps to uncover some of those things that we may potentially overlook. Like it or not, we as human beings have a bias in our mindset, right? We have a bias where we look for a certain thing, and with those aptitude tests or assessments, I'm sorry, personality assessments, it really does help reveal those blind spots that we may potentially have. And so, also in the viewers here, the one word as far as what makes an A player, David, you said humility. I love that. Also, I see being on time, 100%. Being on time and being prompt. My feed is actually not looking right
It's
on.
it's interesting though, because I started my career, for people that don't know me, I started my career in the car business, and I
Mm,
started my career selling cars,
yep.
right? And I was 100% not your typical car salesman. I mean, I think that's why I was so good at it, because every time I sold somebody a car, they were like, Roy, the worst thing I hate doing in my entire life is buying a car. And
Mm-hmm.
you like made it seamless, right? You
Yep.
made it easy, and I just really connected with people. One of the interesting things, and this is just, it goes by some of your background, right? So, just like a personality test, believe it or not, and it sounds strange, but I can walk up to somebody comes in to interview and they park, right? And they go
Mm,
inside. I can actually go to their car and I can look inside their car at the way it looks, right? Is it dirty? Is it clean? Is it packed with stuff? Is it not?
mm,
And I can read people, but that's because I did it for years. Like somebody pulled up to the dealership, the first thing you're doing is greeting them at their car, right? And you're looking at what they have now, right? And
mm-hmm.
you're learning a tremendous amount about their personality.
Mm,
So it's things like that. But I definitely say, over the years, one of the things that I realized that is a strength and a weakness, is I believe in multiple interviews. And I believe
yeah.
in always having an interview offsite, going somewhere, right?
Mm,
Meeting them at a restaurant, a bar, something somewhere else, right? And feeling it's going to be completely different. And sometimes it's even a different person. Like like somebody within my organization goes and has that interview, right? And there's so many different things that you learn about a person compared to being in a structured environment.
mm,
You got to remember, sometimes in the first interview, people are really, depending on the type of person they are, some of them are truly nervous. They're just
mm-hmm.
nervous. I mean, you don't interview, like if you had a job like JR, man, you what, 27 years at one company, was it?
Right.
If I
Yeah.
remember right,
Yeah.
27 years. Okay, so
Yeah.
you hadn't interviewed if you got out of that job, right? And you go get another job, you haven't interviewed in 27 years. Like you're
Not
not a
true.
subject matter expert
No, not true.
in
I interviewed every 2 years because I was in a new
okay.
role every two
Oh,
years.
okay. Okay, gotcha. But some people don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even every 2 years, that's still a long period of time, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say? I mean,
Yeah.
this is not something you're doing every day. Like if you are a golfer, you're golfing all the time, right? But you're not interviewing all the time. So it's getting that type of thing. I don't think anybody's a subject matter expert in interviewing in the way of, and then you wouldn't want that person because that means they can't hold a job, right? So
Right. Exactly.
it's kind of funny that way. But kick it back over to you.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. So I'll clarify, in my 27
Bud.
years, in every 2 years, it wasn't because So people would say like, "Oh, you can't keep a job, JR." That was like sort of the joke, but it was as I was ascending my career. So I just want to, put a pin in that. But yeah, as far as the multiple interviews, I agree with that 100% because, actually it's funny. I had mentioned a company that I'm aligned with. That specific company is called the Hiring Academy, and we teach 10 hiring truths. And one of the hiring truths is to be diligent, not desperate. And what that means is to be able to make sure that we are really exploring a person, not just saying, oh my gosh, I needed to hire this person last week, so I'm just going to hire the first person. Instead, let's be deliberate in our approach. And that's part of, using the different assessments and whatnot. The other part of it, or another thing, is the interview is more than just the conversation, but it is how do they show up? So, Roy, you said you can see their car or what have you. I even believe that when you have multiple interviews, that part of it is about them touring, right? So the tour isn't show and tell them, it's, watch and listen to how they're interacting with folks. And that's actually another one of the hiring truths. And I'll say, a little plug here. We are having a live event in Clearwater, specifically around the Hiring Academy. And if you're interested in that, let me know. That's the thing is we have to be very, very diligent and deliberate in our approach, right? And so even here with our chat, having people as consistent producers, absolutely. Being able to read someone, thank you, Claudine, for that comment. That is something that we might look for as we are touring them into the office, or even as we are walking with them. It's funny. There's a saying that, like, Roy just mentioned meeting someone off site. And there's a saying that you can tell a lot about the person in how they treat the service staff. So imagine that you go to a restaurant with a candidate
Hmm.
and you are having lunch with them or whatever it may be, and using that as an opportunity to read the person and read how they read the people as well. Because if they're treating the service staff very, very poorly, again, that does say a lot about who that person is and might not be the right fit for your organization. Kyle, you'd mentioned here in terms of that deliberate approach with personality assessments. You're curious. It is a tough type of thing, yes. And Claudine, thank you that you're not currently using those assessments, but you agree 100% about reading them and pulling up and what have you. I guess the ultimate point here, when in this particular piece of the conversation is be really deliberate, right? With what are we looking for in that particular person, and not making that mistake. Now, I want to pivot this a little bit. So we're talking a lot about hiring someone. We're talking a lot
Hmm.
about what are we seeing in the first place. So let's talk a little bit about leading and managing these A players. So, Roy, from your perspective, once you hired an A player, how do you keep them engaged?
So it was interesting because, I'll kind of give you a little context to back this. I became the sixth fastest growing company um, in 2021. I grew 355% in 1 year. So I went from a 1,900 square foot facility to occupying a 65,000 square foot facility. I went from 4 employees to 38 employees. I went from 7 to 10 calls a day to 2 to 300 calls a day, right?
Hmm.
And it was pure chaos, right? It was unbelievable chaos, and there was no time to hire correctly. There was no time to create policies, procedures, manuals. There was no time, right? We were just throwing bodies at the situation. And this continued. I was on the Fast 50 for 2022. This continued for another year, right?
Mm.
Of just insane, enormous growth. And believe it or not, tomorrow they're awarding the Fast 50s of Tampa Bay for 2025, right?
Mm.
Tomorrow is the award. And people don't realize like growing too fast is not fun, right? Like people congratulate you, but man, I could sit here for 3 days and tell you stories of things I've been through, right?
Yeah.
Because of the extraordinary growth, right? And the number one thing that I realized when we started to slow down is you absolutely need structure, You need
Mm.
structure. And I had gotten an award through Grow Florida. They look at the top 50 companies, look at all the companies in Florida that are second stage companies, and they pick 50 companies that they believe are companies to watch, right? That are going to do extraordinary things. And in 2022, I became a Grow Florida awardee, but it wasn't the award that made a difference. It was the people within the organization that once I met them and told them the issues that I was having, the problems that I was having, they were able to truly say, here's some real guidance, right? And I ended up putting in a system. So if people don't know what traction is in rocket
Mm.
fuel, traction is a book, and it's EOS. And then there's another book that I would recommend, which is rocket fuel. And I actually didn't put in what is called EOS in traction. I put in a hybrid of that, which is called System and Soul, through a gentleman named Chris White in Orlando. And System and Soul was a hybrid of Traction EOS,
Mm.
but Traction EOS is a system. So this
Yeah.
gentleman had implemented EOS inside companies for many years, and he made a hybrid to have the second side, which is the soul side, the
Mm.
culture, the people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think organizations, you have to have structure, right?
Yeah.
And the most important thing that if you're going to lead a business and you're going to grow, and it doesn't matter what size you are, it doesn't matter how big you are, because you're going to continue to grow constantly. And if you're not, something's wrong. Like you do
Yeah.
need a coach. You need somebody like me or you to help the CEO or the owner get to the next level. Like if you're
Yeah.
stagnant, you don't want to ever be stagnant as a
Yeah.
business owner. You want to constantly be growing. You want to constantly be evolving, and and you want to constantly be overcoming challenges, right? And
Mm-hmm.
being a CEO or an owner is a very lonely place. It really is. Like people
Mm-hmm.
don't understand what a CEO and an owner goes through on a daily basis because they can't talk to the only person that understands is another CEO that has
Mm.
done it because they can't talk to their employees. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot talk to their spouse. They cannot talk even to sometimes to their senior leadership team because they're not the owner. They're not the
Mm.
CEO of the company, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same responsibilities on their shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody can understand it except for somebody that has either done it or is doing it at the exact same time. And either somebody that has done it, you have to remember things change. The world's
Mm-hmm.
evolving, it's changing. So even a CEO that had done it 10 years ago, it's a lot different landscape than 10 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being around other CEOs is great. But let me get back to this. So helping your team is vision. Helping your team get to the next level is the buy-in of where you want the company to go and what you can do. And I learned over time that it's not in any way, shape, or form truly about money. And people, yes, you got to make money, you got to pay your bills, you want money, you want to be successful, you want to be able but it's what somebody wants in their life, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
number one thing that people want is recognition of doing a good job.
Yeah.
Seriously, like recognition of doing a good job, like going and patting somebody on the back or saying like, man, you don't realize how important you are to be part of this team is so much more to somebody, right? Than giving them a raise sometimes, right? And I'm being
Mm-hmm.
serious. Like this
Yep.
is like 100% like yes, people need to make money, but it really comes down to making sure that your people within your organization is getting what they want out of their life,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It's what they want out of their life.
Yep.
It's where they want to go. If somebody's working seriously hard to save money to go on an Alaskan cruise, then help them get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the most important thing you can do as the owner is recognize that that's like the thing that's going to get them super happy and like help them get there, right? So,
Yep.
but you've got to figure these things out within your organization and within your team of what motivates each person because success in this world looks different to everybody,
Yep.
right? I
Yep.
mean, we say this all the time. Success looks different to everybody. So you need to do right by your people and by your team by understanding what success looks like to them, right? What is their goal and where do they want to go? And
Mhm.
how can you help them get there?
Yeah.
Seriously, how can you
Yeah.
help them get there?
Yeah, this is like 100% my background. And whether it is, if for those of you who might have looked at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that my purpose is to help people achieve their definition of success, whether personally or professionally, because we have different definitions, and to do so through positive influence and trusted relationships. And I might even have on my LinkedIn profile that I'm an employee engagement expert. Now that is, that expert is a big word. The reason why I can confidently say that is, the largest team that I led was, I want to say, is about 85 people that were in my own hierarchy. And so, of course, there has to be a level of employee engagement there. And oh, by the way, employee engagement, it isn't just like Roy said, it isn't just about like how happy they are. It isn't just job satisfaction, but one definition of employee engagement is a person's willingness to put forth discretionary effort, as in that they're choosing to do whatever it is in their job, in their function, because they want to. And recognition is a huge piece of employee engagement. Another thing is just the value that they bring, right? And how do you connect what their activity is to what their purpose is, to what their motivator is? A lot of times when I would meet my employees, I would skip level one-to-ones, meeting them for the first time. A lot of times I would open up the conversation, and for those of you who are watching that might have been in my organization, you know this, that I would say, hey, you know what? I want to know everything about you. But I want to know everything about you that you want me to know. If you want me to know who you are, personally, I want to know all about that. If you want me to know who you are professionally, I want to know all about that. Because the bottom line is we are human beings before anything else. And so that is actually even strategy, for lack of better terms. You'll see this in a lot of different leadership books. Start with heart, caring about the individual, caring about what is their true motivator, right? And feeding into that. And having that sort of understanding and then recognizing the behaviors that go along with it. Because here's the deal. When you have an engaged workforce, you're going to have you're going to have a lot of great performance, right? You're
Hmm.
going to have a scenario where we elevate the bar overall. There's that thing, our iron sharpens iron. And so why are we talking about A players in the first place? So we can have the right people, right? So we have the right
Yeah.
people around us. So viewers, I'm going to drop this in the chat here. That is, drop an applause if you've ever worked with a true A player who raised the bar for everyone in your organization, worked with a true A player. And so, Roy, let's talk
And one
about.
of the, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Right. How do you notice an A player? One of the things that was amazing for me to notice an A player, and it taught me things, right, is we had brought on a team member, and he was in a group setting with other team people, and he knew how to do something, but instead of him just doing it, he took the time out, and actually the rest of the team, he showed them how to do it, so the
Yeah,
next time all of them know how to do it, not just him.
yeah,
He like, wow, like that's a team, right? That's a leader, that's an A leader, somebody that actually wants to see people get better and wants to teach people more. And it made it like part of what I wanted to change about my organization is, and start talking about like if somebody knows something, don't just do it, like stop and teach
hmm,
the other people next to you, right? And we always talk about this within an organization because if somebody's out sick, is there somebody cross-trained to know how to do their job? Because things happen in this world, right? And people do need vacations, and bad things happen and people are out, all these different types of things. So you always have to have cross-train, but it's a little bit more than cross-train, right? It's bringing people up, right? It's
hmm,
it's it's
yep,
it's teaching people something that they know how to do. Another story I'll tell you is I was at a car dealership, and I was running this car dealership, and I had just gotten the position, and I brought the entire team into a conference room. And this was right at the beginning. And I said, I asked everybody, I said, this is an open forum. Tell me, you guys have been here longer than me. I just started. Tell me how we can become, again, bigger, stronger, better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the entire team, right? So different people at different pay rates, there's leaders in the room. There's people that are, you know, janitors, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
about to say it. There was this guy in the back of the room, and he starts talking about how we could become better. And some of the things that he was saying were blowing people away. I just looked at everybody's face and my face, right? I'm like, wow. And next thing you know, this guy was a $7 an hour lot porter.
Oh
He
yeah.
moved cars. He moved cars, right? But we gave him the opportunity to speak. And the things that came out of his mouth were amazing. Do you think I wanted to it was like right then and there I realized that this guy's in the wrong position. He don't need to be a lot
Mm-hmm.
porter. Like he can be a lot more, right? Because he was saying game-changing things. So I think it's the job, right, of
Mm.
the senior leadership team, the management team, people like this as well, to have an open forum to always let people express like
Yeah.
how the organization can become better. Now, the team people within the team, there's a you can't be free form and say something that you shouldn't say, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like this isn't this but it's really letting people see that the other day it was interesting. I had somebody that felt like they were stuck within a job. They had been there for 3 years, and it was interesting. The management team had sent the person overseas to learn how to become better, right? And went to this class, and I won't go too deep into it, but the person came back and they answered to two different managers, and they didn't let them implement what they learned, but they sent them and spent a ton of money sending them overseas. And this person felt like they were truly stuck, right? And I said, I think, you've been there for 3 years. You feel like you're stuck. They said, Roy, what kind of advice could you give me in order? I feel like I want to leave, but I love what I do every single day and I love the people I work with. And what I told the person was to take time, right? Because nothing needs to be done really fast, right? But I said,
Mm.
take time and document what you're doing, right? And how you're doing it and how you could do it better if you had their help and they let you. And then write a letter of intent, an
Mm.
actual letter first, and provide that to the two managers or the two CEOs or the two owners, right? Provide a letter. And it could be as long a letter as you want, it could be as short as you want, but tell them, I've been here for 3 years. This is what I'm doing. This is what you sent me here. You spent all this time, effort, and money, and these are the things that I could do to make it better. And I could become better and all these things, right? And put it all down and let them read it. And then afterwards, of course, at the end, request to have a meeting with them. But they should run to have a meeting with you after getting a letter of intent that you want to become more within the organization, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Like, who writes a letter of intent? I mean, this is kind of, and I'm talking an actual letter, right? But it's different. Again, it's different. So write this letter, and it actually ended up working, right? Because they took the time probably to read it themselves. Then they got together, had a meeting together, and realized that they weren't letting this person shine. And it worked out. If it didn't work for that person, I would say, listen, you're in the wrong position. Like if you wrote this letter of intent and you're not going to become more, and you spend all this time doing it and you've been there for 3 years, you maybe had a dead end job, right?
Mm.
But it actually worked. So it was great to see that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is as we navigate, whether we're the employee or the person that is looking to advance within an organization, even if it is looking to grow as an entrepreneur, there are all these different signals to pay attention to. And again, keeping in mind that the ultimate goal here and why we're talking about this particular topic of hiring and managing A players is for success, period. And if you have somebody who is really engaged in that, then the likelihood of achieving success is so much the greater. If you have somebody who is, imagine this. Imagine that there's a group of people on a rowboat and everyone is rowing in the same direction, but then all of a sudden this, I'll say, non-A player decides to row in the opposite direction. What does that do? That makes it harder for the other people, and they have to work extra to be able to go in the right direction. And so it is important for us to look at all these different elements around how they interact. One of the things you talked about too was an A player is showing people how. Not necessarily just for cross training, but then it is about culture. I mean, gosh, in one of my roles, while I didn't have all these people directly in my hierarchy, I was responsible for the lives of roughly 500 or so employees in the Tampa area, actually in Florida. And it was really important to make sure that there was this culture of togetherness because there are all these different departments that work together. And, for those of you who might not have all those different departments, maybe it's just how to interact, get the individuals interacting. Ultimately, it is how do we get everyone aligned, and you'd mentioned the word vision earlier, Roy. How do we get everyone aligned in that vision? I actually even talk a lot about that, in terms of people making sure that they understand what their role is and that they're able to execute the right way. And at the same time, that other people know what everyone else is doing. There's that saying, what does team stand for? Together, everyone achieves more. And so continuing to identify these key skills in people to make them A players, to retain them is critical because in this day and age, we kick things off saying that one of the, not maybe not at the very beginning, but one of the hardest things is finding talent. And part of that is because employees, for lack of better terms, have held employers hostage because they're like, I have this knowledge, I have these skill sets, I can go elsewhere. I'm an anomaly. There aren't that many people who had worked for an organization for more than 20 years in this day and age. In most cases, people are going from different companies, and good for them because they're growing their career, they're expanding. But that makes it more difficult because sometimes they're just chasing the dollar, and we're not ensuring that they're truly engaged in what they're doing. And again, I said a person's willingness to put forth discretionary effort. So I want to do some rapid fire questions here. And this is both for you, Roy, and then also for those viewers. And just rapid fire, one answer, one quick answer. Skill or attitude, which wins out for you? One or the other? Skill or attitude?
Attitude,
Attitude.
100% attitude.
All
I can
right.
teach skill.
All right, perfect. What's more painful, a bad hire or losing a great one?
Losing a great one.
Okay. All right. And then another rapid fire, promote from within or hire externally?
Promote from within yeah. I mean, it's for me, yes. You should
Nice.
always be creating a way for your people to become better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that you can promote from within. So if you stop
Yeah.
teaching the people that you have there, that's not good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So now I'm gonna post these questions that I just asked into the chat for the viewers to interact. But you said attitude when that first rapid fire. I said skill or attitude, which wins out? You said attitude. Talk to me about that.
I think attitude means everything, right? So
Hmm.
one of the things that I actually learned that a lot of organizations and a lot of people don't realize, right, is every single person, right, is entitled to a bad day, right? People just
Hmm.
have bad days, right? It's just part of life, right? Things happen. The number one thing that you need to realize as a leader or a CEO, if any of them are on here, is if somebody's having a bad day, you need to give them the day off. And I'm
Mm,
serious. Like, you do not want that to, like, if I'm in a bad mood and I'm really bad mood, I need to stay away from the office, right? Because all that's going to do is infect somebody else. So, and it could be it could be something that you don't want anybody else to know. Like, there's something going on
yep.
personally that is truly affecting you. But you need to have some type of thing in the organization that is like a way to say, like, I'm having a bad day, like, or I can't, like, I can't come in. It needs to be like, this is like your one free day for that, or whatever you want to call it, right? And I realized
Yeah.
that because somebody said to me, they were like, man, like, even went in and on a bad day, and next thing you know, like I'm talking to another CEO, and this is things I've learned over the years, people. So they were like, "Why did you go in?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Do you realize like you're infecting your team? Like you don't even maybe realize that you're doing it, but just the attitude that you're in, right, is affecting somebody else." So
Hmm.
I think that is enormous to realize within people that like it attitude means everything. It
Yeah.
means everything, right?
Yeah.
And you have to make sure to be successful that if you're facing customers or clients or any type of person that affects your business, the people, the team that you have has a great attitude, right?
Yeah.
Because it makes a big, gigantic difference, right? So yeah, I think it's that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
it's funny because like even I mentioned it earlier when I'm looking at skills for an A player, I'm looking at their attitude more than their aptitude because of the
Hmm.
fact that we can train them on the things, and if they don't have the right attitude, then not great. And so, you know, I'll ask this question about that. What are if you were to say these are three easy qualities, or maybe even two easy qualities to look for that define somebody as showing the right attitude? How do you see that in a person that they have the right attitude?
Super. It's actually crazy, right? It's, are they the first in? Are they
Mm,
last to leave? Right? I mean, these are just, you hear it all the time, but are they the first in? Are they the last to leave? Or do they have energy? Right?
mhm.
Do they inspire to become more? Do they help other people? Right? Are they cheery? Are they just those things? Right?
Yeah,
And that is something you don't see, right? So then you don't see a lot of, but that's the thing that people need to realize. Like, listen, if you're in a job right now, right? Can you imagine if you change and you're the first in and you're the last to leave and you're the one to assist everybody and you change your attitude? Like, it's going to be noticed. You don't have to make somebody notice it. I'm going to notice it. Like, if you were in
yeah,
mine, the next thing you know, you're the first in, you're the last to leave, you're this, right? It's simple. Like if you're closing at 5 o'clock and the phone rings at 5 o'clock, do you have somebody within your team that's going to pick up the phone and help that customer till whatever time,
yeah,
right? And then they leave, right?
yeah.
That's there. So I mean, there's so many different things that somebody can do, but it's those are just easy, simple ones right off the top of your tongue.
Yeah, I'll even add to that. I agree with all those things. And one other thing is to look at who is a peer leader. And so earlier I said in the call or the session about whether you're a leader or aspiring leader, or maybe you don't want to be a leader. At the end of the day, we're always influencing someone somehow, whether or not we intend to. And that is one of the definitions of leadership. And how a person shows up in terms of helping others, in terms of their work ethic, in terms of Philo, first in, last out, all those different things is about pure leadership and having an impact for the greater good as far as attitude. So then let me go back to another one of those rapid fire questions. I asked more painful, bad hire or losing a great one, and you said losing a great one. So talk to us a little about that from your perspective.
Yeah, sometimes it's the one thing that people have to realize in this world is change. Change happens, and change
Hmm.
happens within people, right? You were at a job for 27 years, you're no longer at that job. People are married for 30 years and then they get divorced, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
people are married for a year and then they get divorced. Like there's all of people pass away, right? And we know those circumstances ourselves, me and you. So there's always change, right? And I think one of the hardest things for me is I had somebody change. I had somebody that was truly valuable to me within one of my organizations, and their outlook on life changed, believe it or not, after COVID. So one day the person came to me and said, Roy, like, I love you. I love working. with you. I love the team. Uh, but my outlook on life has changed, believe it or not. And I built a van in my free time, and I'm gonna do van life. Like I'm leaving and I'm doing
Hmm.
van life.
Wow.
And believe it or not, their position was so valuable to be in the organization. Like they were here. So it's not a remote job, right? Like it was things that they needed to be here. And I had to say to him, man, if that's what you want to do, you only live one life. Like you only live one life. Like if circumstances change, man, you're welcome back. And he goes, listen, I'll stay. I'll stay for a month. I'll stay for 2 months. I'll stay for 3 months till we can find the accurate replacement, but I am gonna go, right? Like he
Yeah.
wasn't gonna stay forever. And it was a good relationship I had with him, but like that type of thing, yeah. I mean, it's just there's nothing you can do, and the right thing to do is to let that person go because again, all that matters in this world is happiness, truly, like true
Yeah.
happiness for somebody. So that's a story. That's a
Yeah.
story, that, and sometimes, man, I've made a lot of mistakes. Like I've made an enormous amount of mistakes, even when with people. I had somebody in my ear telling me I needed to get rid of this guy. And I'll never take that back. And I did. I got rid of a guy that I shouldn't have gotten rid of. And until this day, like I still think about it. It still hits me, but it was again, hindsight's 2020, you learn. And the guy
Hmm.
that had told me that I listened to, like I shouldn't have listened to him, right? Like
Yeah.
I shouldn't have listened to him. But there's nothing you can do. You just learn from it and move on, right? But I can't imagine if I would still have that person because I realized that was a mistake. Like I let somebody go that I shouldn't have let go. That was really there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
I,
and
I think,
that's the thing too, is it's like we have the organization the way we want it to work. And like you said earlier, it's change happens. And then how do we
yeah,
adapt to it? And
yeah.
it is painful losing a great employee. That rapid fire question to me is a little bit tricky, because it's like, oh, what's more painful, a bad hire or losing a great one? And so some people might say, well, a bad hire, because in a bad hire, you have to go through the process of then, developing them, correcting them, potentially having them turn over and just to bring someone else in and whatnot. Yes, that's painful. Now, for those of you who might have heard of the 2080 rule or the Pareto principle, you know, one of the philosophies behind that is the top 20% of your organization delivers 80% of your results. Therefore, I would suggest that losing a great employee might be a little bit more painful because a great employee probably is really helping elevate the team. Probably is even helping to carry the baggage of others, right? Because they're great. They're that top 20% that's contributing to 80% of the success of your organization. And so, really, what is the best way? A, making sure you're hiring the right people the first time, anytime, right? Actually, that's the slogan for the Hiring Academy: hire the right person the first time, every time. And B,
And if you don't,
retaining them.
if you don't, fire fast. Fire
Yes, yeah,
very fast. Like
yeah,
fire very, very fast. And I'm being honest, like get them out. Like if you know they're not the right person, like it's just gonna cost you time and money. And yes, it like in your head as an
yeah,
owner, right? You're like, man, I gotta do this again, or I gotta find this person, or I gotta waste all this time. Like that is the bad thing that's in the back of your head as a hiring person or something like that. But if they're not the right person, get rid of them as soon as you figure it out.
exactly. I agree with that because of, all the effort. Again, that 2080 rule. You want to make sure that you have this top 20% who are delivering 80% of the results and working through them to ensure that your company is going to be successful. So we are in the last minute of our session. The time really flies when we have these conversations.
Yeah, man.
I love it. So I just wanted to before we close out here, again, just I welcome all of you who have tuned in and those of you who are watching the recording. Please feel free to reach out to either Roy or myself. You can continue to chat on this particular post and we'll be reviewing those things. If there are any particular topics that are of interest for you for Secrets for Success in 2025, please let us know. The bottom line is this: both Roy and I are committed to sharing some insights that should help you in your success.
Hmm.
And if you have any questions about anything that we talked about, us more than happy to schedule some time with you to be able to have conversations around these pieces. Again, we're both consultants. We're both business consultants and would be happy to talk about how we can help you achieve success. So thank you from my perspective. Roy, I'll turn it over to you to close us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for tuning in. Truly appreciate it. Just like JR said, man, we're here every single week. Secrets for Success in 2025, just trying to help everybody become better in business and in life, right? And if there's a topic that you want us to talk about next week, please feel free to send it to us. We'll be more than happy to, we pick topics, but if there's something that somebody would love to hear about, we'll be more than happy to do that. But like I said, have a wonderful week. Look forward to having you tune in next week. And thank you so much. All right. If you're in Florida, try to stay dry with all this humidity and heat. All right. Take care.
Take
Bye bye.
care.